Tonight, we travel back to a world that most of us would struggle to survive for even a single day. A world without antibiotics, without modern hospitals, without an understanding of germs, and without any certainty that tomorrow would arrive safely. So find a comfortable position, allow the worries of the modern world to drift into the background, and join me as we step into the difficult and often uncomfortable life of a medieval plague doctor. You may discover that this strange profession was far less glamorous than its famous mask suggests, and by the end of tonight's journey, you may be quite grateful to live in the present day. Our story begins in Europe during the 14th century. At first glance, a medieval city might appear lively and prosperous. Merchants filled crowded marketplaces. Blacksmiths worked beside glowing furnaces. Children played in narrow streets between rows of wooden and stone houses. Church bells marked the passing hours. And for many people, daily life followed familiar routines. Yet beneath this appearance of normality, danger was quietly approaching. The year is 1348. Rumors are spreading across Europe. Travelers arriving from distant cities tell disturbing stories. Entire communities have become sick. Families are disappearing. Villages are becoming silent. And everywhere the same terrifying word is whispered: plague. At first, many people refused to believe the stories. After all, frightening rumors were common during the Middle Ages. But soon the evidence becomes impossible to ignore. Ships arrive carrying sick sailors. Merchants fall ill shortly after returning from distant journeys. Priests begin conducting more funerals than usual, and before long, fear settles over entire cities. Imagine waking up one morning to discover that several of your neighbors have suddenly become ill. Nobody knows exactly why. Nobody knows how to stop it, and nobody knows who might become sick next. In this uncertain world, city officials desperately search for solutions. They need someone willing to examine patients, someone willing to visit infected homes, someone willing to record deaths and provide medical advice. In other words, they need plague doctors. This might sound like an important and respected profession, and in some ways it was. But the reality was often much less impressive. Many plague doctors were not experienced physicians. Some had little formal medical training at all. A surprising number accepted the position because nobody else wanted it. The job was dangerous. The hours were long, and every patient might carry a deadly disease. Yet cities were willing to pay generous salaries to anyone brave enough to take the risk, or perhaps desperate enough. Now imagine that you have accepted the position. Perhaps you are a young physician seeking experience. Perhaps you are struggling financially, or perhaps you simply had no better opportunities available. Whatever the reason, your life is about to change dramatically. The city authorities hand you a list of responsibilities. You must visit the sick. You must monitor outbreaks. You must record deaths. You must inspect neighborhoods. And you must do all of this while surrounded by fear and uncertainty. Not exactly an easy assignment. Your first day begins before sunrise. The streets are unusually quiet. Many residents remain inside their homes. Those who venture outdoors move quickly and avoid unnecessary conversation. The atmosphere feels different. People glance nervously at one another. A simple cough can attract worried looks. A sneeze can empty an entire section of a marketplace. Fear itself seems to have become a permanent resident of the city. As you walk through the streets, you begin noticing signs that something is wrong. Several shops remain closed. Families have nailed cloth markers to their doors. Funeral processions pass more frequently than they once did. Even the church bells seem busier than usual. For many medieval people, the plague feels almost supernatural. Some believe it is a punishment from God. Others blame unusual planetary alignments. Some suspect poisoned wells. And a few believe mysterious forces are moving through the air itself. Unfortunately, nobody knows the real cause. That knowledge lies centuries in the future. As a plague doctor, you are expected to provide answers, yet in truth, you possess many of the same uncertainties as everyone else. Soon your first patient awaits. A messenger arrives carrying urgent news. A local family requires assistance. Several members of the household have become ill. Without delay, you begin making your way through the narrow streets toward their home. The journey is short, but it feels much longer, because with every step, you move closer to a disease that has already terrified an entire continent. And as the door slowly opens before you, the difficult reality of life. As the wooden door slowly opens before you, a nervous woman appears in the doorway. Her face is pale. Her eyes reveal several sleepless nights, and before she even speaks, you can sense the fear that has settled over this household. She steps aside without saying much. There is little need for introductions. The situation is already obvious. Someone inside is very sick. You enter the home carefully. The air feels heavy. Not because of the disease itself, but because of what people believe about it. During the Middle Ages, many physicians think illness travels through corrupted air. Bad smells, rotting materials, and foul odors are often blamed for spreading disease. This belief becomes known as the miasma theory. According to this idea, breathing contaminated air can make a healthy person dangerously ill. Whether true or not, most people accept it as fact, and that includes many plague doctors. As you step further into the house, a strong mixture of smells fills the room. Smoke from a fireplace, cooking herbs, damp wood, and the scent of sickness that nobody can quite describe. To medieval people, this combination is deeply concerning. It is exactly the kind of environment they fear. The family leads you toward a small bedroom. Several relatives stand nearby. Nobody speaks above a whisper. Everyone seems afraid that even ordinary conversation might somehow make the situation worse. Inside the room lies a man who appears exhausted. His breathing is shallow, his skin looks pale, and despite several blankets covering him, he trembles with chills. The family watches closely as you approach. They are hoping for answers, perhaps even a cure. Unfortunately, cures are in short supply, and certainty is almost impossible to find. For a moment, imagine the pressure resting on your shoulders. You are expected to understand a disease that confuses nearly everyone. You are expected to offer comfort when you possess very few effective treatments, and you are expected to remain calm while surrounded by fear. It is not an easy task. You begin your examination. Without modern medical equipment, most diagnoses depend upon observation. You study the patient's face. You listen to his breathing. You ask questions about his symptoms. How long has he been ill? When did the fever begin? Has anyone else in the household become sick? The answers are troubling. Several family members have already developed similar symptoms. A neighbor recently died, and another household nearby is reportedly experiencing the same problem. The pattern is becoming impossible to ignore. Outside this home, the plague continues its relentless advance. Across Europe, countless doctors face similar scenes every day. Some cities lose thousands of residents. Others lose far more. Entire communities begin living under a shadow of uncertainty. Nobody knows whose turn will come next. As a plague doctor, you attempt to project confidence, yet privately, you understand the risks. Every home you enter may contain infection. Every patient may expose you to danger, and every day could potentially be your last. For this reason, plague doctors begin adopting unusual forms of protection. Many years later, these protective measures will become some of the most famous images in medical history. Among them is the strange beaked mask. Although not every plague doctor wears one during the earliest outbreaks, the image eventually becomes closely associated with the profession. Imagine seeing such a figure for the first time. A long, dark robe, heavy gloves, boots reaching above the ankles. and a mask featuring a large bird-like beak. To modern eyes, it appears almost theatrical, perhaps even frightening. To medieval citizens, however, it represents something different. Hope, protection, and the possibility that someone is willing to confront the disease. The beak itself serves a specific purpose. Physicians often fill it with aromatic substances: lavender, rose petals, mint, camphor, various herbs and spices. The goal is simple. If bad air causes illness, then pleasant-smelling substances might help filter or neutralize that danger. Today we know this approach offers limited protection against plague, but from the perspective of the time, it seems logical. When knowledge is limited, people work with the information available to them, and sometimes that information leads to unusual solutions. As the outbreak grows, your daily routine becomes increasingly demanding. The number of patients continues rising. Messengers arrive at all hours, families request assistance, officials demand reports, and there never seems to be enough time. Morning visits blend into afternoon examinations. Afternoons stretch into evening consultations. Even after darkness falls, emergencies continue. The city rarely sleeps, and neither do you. Gradually, exhaustion becomes a constant companion. The afternoon slowly fades into evening as you continue walking through the city. The streets are quieter now, not because the day's work is finished, but because many people no longer have a reason to leave their homes. The plague has changed ordinary life. Markets close earlier, public gatherings grow smaller, and neighbors who once spoke daily now watch one another from a distance. Even simple activities have become sources of anxiety. A cough from across the street can cause an entire group to step away. A fever in one household can send fear through an entire neighborhood. And as a plague doctor, you find yourself at the center of this growing uncertainty. The next house on your list belongs to a wealthy merchant. Unlike the small home you visited earlier, this building is large and impressive. Stone walls surround a spacious courtyard. Expensive fabrics hang inside the windows. Servants move quickly through the halls. At least the few servants who have not already fled. Money can purchase many comforts, but it cannot purchase immunity from disease. The merchant's family greets you with visible concern. They have heard the stories spreading through the city. They know what has happened in other neighborhoods. And now they fear the plague has reached their own doorstep. You are escorted upstairs to a private chamber. There you find the merchant resting in a large bed. His family has spared no expense. Fresh linens cover the mattress. Candles burn throughout the room. Bundles of herbs hang from the walls. The air smells strongly of rosemary and lavender. Yet despite these efforts, the man appears gravely ill. His face is covered in sweat. His breathing is uneven, and his eyes open only occasionally. The family watches your every movement. They expect answers, perhaps because wealth has always solved their problems before. But disease does not care about social status. The plague shows little interest in titles, property, or influence. It visits rich and poor alike. As you examine the patient, you notice familiar signs. The fever, the weakness, the exhaustion. Symptoms that have become increasingly common in recent weeks. Outside this room, the city continues to struggle. More homes report illness, more funerals take place each day, and the number of people seeking help grows steadily larger. The merchant's wife asks the question you hear more than any other: will he survive? For a moment, the room becomes completely silent. Everyone waits for your response. Unfortunately, medieval medicine rarely offers clear predictions. Some patients recover unexpectedly. Others decline with frightening speed. No doctor can say with certainty what tomorrow will bring, So you answer as honestly as possible. You explain that his condition is serious. You recommend continued care. You advise the family to monitor his symptoms closely. It is not the answer they hope to hear, but it is the only truthful one available. As you leave the merchant's home, the contrast between wealth and poverty becomes impossible to ignore. Earlier that day, you stood inside a cramped wooden house. Now you have visited one of the finest homes in the city, yet fear exists in both places. Disease exists in both places, and suffering exists in both places. The plague has become a strange equalizer. Soon another messenger arrives. This time, the destination is a much poorer district. The streets become narrower as you approach. The buildings stand closer together. Families crowd into small living spaces. Children play beside open drains. Animals wander freely between houses. In ordinary times, life here is already difficult. During an outbreak, it becomes even harder. You arrive at a small dwelling where several people share a single room. The conditions are challenging. Fresh air is limited. Space is scarce, and resources are stretched thin. The family welcomes you inside with nervous expressions. They know medical help is limited, yet they remain desperate for any assistance you can provide. A young woman lies near the fireplace. She is clearly unwell. Her mother sits beside her. Exhaustion covers the older woman's face. Perhaps she has not slept properly for days. Perhaps she spends every waking moment worrying about her daughter's condition, or perhaps she fears becoming sick herself. All three possibilities seem equally likely. You kneel beside the patient and begin another examination. By now, the routine feels familiar. Questions, observations, careful attention to symptoms. Yet no matter how many patients you visit, the experience never becomes easy. Every family has its own fears. Every household has its own story. And every patient reminds you of the enormous limits of medieval medicine. As darkness settles across the city, lanterns begin appearing in windows. The streets grow quieter still. Most residents prefer to remain indoors. The world feels smaller at night, more isolated, more uncertain. For a plague doctor, however, work continues. Illness does not follow a schedule. Patients become sick at every hour. Emergencies arrive without warning. And rest often feels like a distant luxury. You continue walking through the darkening streets. The sound of your footsteps echoes against stone walls. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rings. Then another, and another. Each bell marks the passing of time. But it also serves as a reminder. The city is changing. The outbreak is growing. And nobody knows when it will end. As you make your way towards your next destination, a cold wind moves through the narrow streets. The lantern light flickers. Shadows stretch across the cobblestones, and for the first time since accepting this position, you begin to wonder whether courage alone will be enough to survive the months ahead. Because tomorrow will bring more patience, more fear, more uncertainty, and perhaps for some families, more loss. The plague is no longer a distant rumor. It is now part of everyday life, and its grip on the city seems to tighten with each passing day. The following morning arrives beneath a gray and overcast sky. For a brief moment, the city almost appears peaceful. The streets are damp from light rain. A cool breeze drifts between the buildings, and from a distance, the familiar sound of church bells echoes through the morning air. But the calm is deceptive. Beneath the surface, fear continues to spread. As a plague doctor, your day begins before most residents have even left their beds. There are already messages waiting for you. New reports, new patients, new concerns from city officials. The outbreak is showing no signs of slowing down. You eat a simple breakfast and prepare for another long day. Exhaustion lingers in your body. The previous night offered little rest, yet there is no opportunity to remain home. Too many people are depending on your arrival. Outside, the city is slowly coming to life. Merchants open their stalls. Workers begin their daily routines. And despite the danger surrounding them, ordinary people continue searching for ways to live normal lives. Human beings have always possessed a remarkable ability to adapt, even during periods of crisis, even during a plague. Your first destination is a temporary hospital established by local authorities. The word hospital may create a certain image in the modern mind. Bright rooms, advanced equipment, trained medical staff. But medieval hospitals are very different places. Many function more as shelters than medical centers. They provide beds, food, basic care, and spiritual comfort. Yet effective treatments remain limited. As you enter the building, the atmosphere feels heavy. Rows of patients occupy simple wooden beds. Some are awake. Others sleep uneasily. A few stare silently at the ceiling. Family members sit nearby whenever possible. Many refuse to leave the side of their loved ones. The smell inside the hospital is difficult to ignore. Herbs hang from beams overhead. Candles burn continuously. Windows remain open whenever weather permits. Everyone is attempting to improve the air. To medieval physicians, fresh air represents one of the most important defenses against illness. Whether it helps or not, nobody can say for certain, but it provides people with a sense of action. And sometimes action feels better than helplessness. As you move through the ward, you examine patients one after another. A fever here, a persistent cough there, weakness, pain, confusion. The symptoms vary from person to person, yet the outcome remains frustratingly unpredictable. Some patients appear close to death, only to recover days later. Others seem stable before suddenly worsening. The plague follows no rules that anyone can fully understand. This uncertainty affects doctors just as much as patients. Without knowing exactly what causes the disease, treatment becomes a process of trial and error. Some physicians recommend bloodletting. Others prescribe herbal mixtures. Some encourage prayer and religious devotion. Others focus on diet and fresh air. Each doctor hopes their methods will make a difference. Unfortunately, many treatments offer little real protection. One common practice involves balancing what physicians call the four humors. According to medieval medical theory, health depends upon maintaining harmony between four bodily fluids: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. If these substances become unbalanced, illness may follow. At least, that is the belief. As a result, many treatments focus on restoring balance rather than addressing the true source of infection. Today, these ideas seem strange, but to people living in the Middle Ages, they represent accepted medical knowledge. Doctors work with the information available to them, just as every generation does. As the day continues, you help record patient conditions for city. This task may sound unimportant compared to treating the sick, yet accurate records are becoming increasingly valuable. Leaders want to know how quickly the disease is spreading, which neighborhoods are most affected, and whether conditions are improving or worsening. The numbers are troubling. Each week brings new cases. Each week brings additional deaths. And despite everyone's efforts, the outbreak continues moving through the population. By afternoon, the hospital grows busier. More patients arrive seeking assistance. Some walk through the doors on their own. Others must be carried by relatives. Many arrive frightened, not only because they feel ill, but because they have witnessed what happened to neighbors and friends. Fear has become almost as common as the disease itself. As evening approaches, you finally step outside. The fresh air feels welcome after hours spent indoors. The streets remain active, but something has changed. Conversations seem quieter. Smiles seem rarer. People move with greater caution. The city still functions, but its confidence has begun to fade. And as you make your way home beneath the darkening sky, one uncomfortable truth becomes impossible to ignore. The plague is no longer a temporary emergency. It is becoming a part of everyday life. And for those tasked with fighting it, the hardest days may still lie ahead. Several weeks pass, and the rhythm of the city begins to change in ways nobody could have imagined only a few months earlier. The outbreak continues, not with the sudden shock that first accompanied its arrival, but with a slow and exhausting persistence. Each day brings new reports. Each day brings fresh concerns. And each day seems to add another layer of worry to a population already burdened by uncertainty. As a plague doctor, you have become accustomed to difficult news. Yet even you find yourself surprised by how quickly fear can reshape an entire community. Many households no longer welcome visitors. Doors remain closed. Windows stay shuttered. Families limit contact with neighbors whenever possible. The city that once felt crowded and lively now feels strangely distant. People still live side by side, but increasingly they do so alone. City officials respond by introducing new measures designed to slow the spread of illness. Among the most significant is quarantine. The idea itself is simple. If sick individuals remain separated from healthy individuals, perhaps fewer people will become infected. Today the concept seems familiar, but during the Middle Ages, it feels both unusual and frightening. Many residents struggle to accept it. Imagine receiving instructions that your family must remain inside your home for days or even weeks. Food becomes harder to obtain. Communication becomes limited. Ordinary routines disappear almost overnight. For many people, quarantine feels nearly as frightening as the disease itself. As part of your duties, you are often asked to inspect homes placed under isolation. These visits are rarely pleasant. One afternoon, you arrive at a narrow street where several houses have been marked by local authorities. The signs are impossible to miss. Residents know exactly what they mean. Illness has been discovered inside. The affected families must remain separated from the rest of the city. A small crowd watches from a distance as you approach. Nobody wants to stand too close. Nobody wants unnecessary attention. Fear has taught people to be cautious. Sometimes overly cautious. You knock on the first door. A tired voice responds from within. When the door finally opens, you find a family struggling with the realities of confinement. The father appears exhausted. The mother worries constantly about supplies. Children grow restless after spending so many days indoors. The atmosphere feels tense, not because the family lacks courage, but because uncertainty is difficult to endure. They ask the same questions you hear almost everywhere. How long will this last? When can we leave? Will everyone recover? Unfortunately, clear answers remain rare. You provide what reassurance you can. You explain the purpose of isolation. You encourage patience. and you remind them that these precautions may help protect others. The words offer some comfort, yet you can tell that worry remains. After all, fear rarely disappears after a single conversation. Outside, daily life continues, but the city no longer resembles the place you first encountered. Many businesses struggle to survive. Travel has become more difficult. Some merchants refuse to enter heavily affected areas. Others abandon their journeys altogether. Economic activity slows. Opportunities become scarce. And for ordinary families, hardship grows steadily worse. At the same time, religious activity increases throughout the city. Churches fill with anxious worshippers. Some spend hours praying for protection. Others seek forgiveness for past mistakes. Still others attempt to understand why such suffering has appeared in the first place. For medieval communities, faith remains one of the few sources of certainty available, even when answers remain elusive. Not everyone responds in the same way. Alongside prayer, superstition begins spreading rapidly. Strange rumors circulate through neighborhoods. Some people carry lucky charms. Others hang protective objects above their doors. Certain individuals become convinced that specific symbols possess special powers. A few even claim to know the true cause of the plague. These explanations vary widely. Some blame outsiders. Others blame unusual weather. Others point toward mysterious forces they cannot fully describe. In times of fear, people often search desperately for explanations. Any explanation, even those lacking evidence. As a plague doctor, you witness these beliefs firsthand. You hear stories from frightened families. You listen to theories from concerned citizens. And you observe how uncertainty encourages both wisdom and misunderstanding. The human desire for answers is powerful, especially when faced with danger. As evening approaches, you continue your rounds through the city. The streets are quieter than they once were. The marketplaces close early. Many homes remain dark. A sense of caution hangs over everything. Yet despite the challenges, life continues. Children still laugh occasionally. Neighbors still help one another. Families still gather around evening meals. The plague has changed the city, but it has not completely broken it. For now, people endure. They adapt. They hope. And they wait. As the sun disappears beyond the rooftops and shadows stretch across the cobblestones, you find yourself reflecting on how much has changed since the outbreak began. What first seemed like a temporary crisis has become a defining part of daily life. Quarantine, fear, prayer, isolation. These have become ordinary experiences for thousands of people. And deep down, a troubling question remains unanswered. If conditions have already become this difficult, what might the coming months bring? As summer gradually gives way to autumn, the days become shorter and the nights arrive earlier. A cool wind begins moving through the city streets. Leaves gather along the edges of narrow roads. The air feels different now. Not necessarily safer, just different. For many residents, the passing seasons bring a small sense of hope. Perhaps the disease will weaken. Perhaps colder weather will slow its spread. Perhaps the worst is finally behind them. Unfortunately, nobody knows for certain. And as a plague doctor, experience has taught you to be cautious whenever optimism begins to appear. The outbreak has already surprised people many times. There is little reason to assume it will stop now. Your responsibilities continue growing. Each morning begins with reports from city officials, lists of newly infected households, records of recent deaths, requests for inspections, questions that rarely have simple answers. The paperwork alone consumes a significant portion of your day. Although history often remembers plague doctors for their masks and dramatic appearance, much of the work involved observation and record keeping. Officials need information. Without information, they have no way of understanding what is happening inside the city. You spend hours documenting cases, street names, family names, symptoms, outcomes. The process is repetitive, but important. Every detail helps create a clearer picture of the outbreak, and yet, as the numbers continue rising, the picture becomes increasingly troubling. By midday, another urgent message arrives. A neighborhood near the city wall has reported several sudden illnesses. You gather your belongings and begin the journey. The streets are busier than usual. People continue buying food, carrying supplies, and attending to daily responsibilities. Life must continue, even during a plague, perhaps especially during a plague, because routine provides comfort. Routine creates the illusion that normal life still exists. As you walk, you notice how people react to your presence. Some nod respectfully. Others avoid eye contact altogether. A few quietly step aside to create distance. The sight of a plague doctor has become deeply symbolic. You represent help, but you also represent danger. Wherever you go, disease is often nearby. The neighborhood near the city wall appears tense. Residents speak in hushed voices. Doors open only slightly before quickly closing again. Rumors move rapidly through the area. Some claim dozens are already sick. Others insist the reports are exaggerated. As usual, the truth lies somewhere in between. Inside one small home, you discover 3 family members suffering from similar